You ever been on a plane, seen somebody that looks suspicious, and thought, I don't know if I trust him or not? Well, this phenomenon and fear was created partially back in 1971 when a man named Dan Cooper, or D.B. Cooper, boarded a plane in Portland. In 1971, we were in the midst of the Vietnam War. India and Pakistan were fighting, and the Manson family was found guilty. But also in 1971, on Thanksgiving Eve, D.B. Cooper jumped from a Boeing 727 airplane into the upper Northwest wilderness with never to be found again. A little bit about this conversation getting started in this phenomenon. From that stormy day to this present time, the whereabouts of where the money, where D.B. himself went, and who he was have never been found. Let's first start with a little chronological timeline. D.B., or Dan Cooper as he was called, was eyewitness boarding a plane on November 24th, 1971. He sat down in his seat 18C on his Boeing 727 Flight 305 to Seattle. He ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, and sat back. Soon after the plane took off, he reached over for a stewardess named Florence Schaffner, who initially looked at him slightly odd when he handed her a note, but then he informed her, "You better read this because I have a bomb." She sat down to DB after that and asked, "Can I see the bomb?" And he cracked open the briefcase, and inside was three red cylinders on top of 5 other red cylinders connected to a battery. With the assurance that she thought it was a bomb, he made some demands. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable American currency. He wanted 4 parachutes. He wanted a fuel truck waiting when they arrived in Seattle to refuel the plane for the next destination. With these demands, Schaffner went to the pilot, William Scott, and relayed this information to him, which he relayed to the air traffic controller in Seattle. Once landing in Seattle, upon his demands being met, the $200,000 and the parachutes, he let all the 36 passengers and the attendants exit the plane. After that, the plane was refueled by 2 different fuel trucks. And while this was going on, he talked to authorities and the flight crew to inform them of his plans to go to Mexico City. The flight crew informed him that this could not be done in one stop, that they would have to stop somewhere and refuel. So he informed them that they would stop in Reno, Nevada. He gave detailed information about how the plane should be flown. The height and altitude, the speed, the wing tilt, and having the rear stairs lowered. The airline company refused to have these lowered on takeoff, and he obliged and said, "Well, I'll just drop them when I decide to exit the plane." Once up in the air, a National Guard team of 2 F-106 fighter pilots and a Lockheed T-33 aircraft trailed the plane out of sight. At 8 p.m., a light indicator came on in the cockpit of the airplane, letting them know that the aircraft stairs had been lowered. At 8:13, the rear of the plane tilted upwards, and the trajectory of the plane had to be balanced back out. A little after 10 p.m., the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, with Cooper nowhere to be found, and the search started immediately. A few of the items left behind by Cooper were: 1, a black necktie, similar to this, but a clip-on style. One of the parachutes was still there, but was torn apart. This was thought to be that he used the strings out of this to tie the money to him when he exited the plane. Various other prints were recovered, a few cigarette butts. Besides that, just some eyewitnesses with some detailed composite drawing features for the authorities was all that was had of Cooper. There's a lot of speculation on where he actually jumped at. Being 8 p.m., it was still believed that he was in between Oregon and Washington. But there's a lot of details missing still to this day, and why conspiracy theorists think that, there's more to it not being told to the public. The exact time he jumped, when he pulled his ripcord, the weather that night was particularly stormy, so he could have been drifted by the wind one way or another. All these factors, plus a survival of this jump, one in the wilderness and two in the severe weather conditions, would have been nearly impossible. A few of the theories. The FBI was the main leader in this, main leader in the search for D.B. Cooper. But there was also some amateur scientists and sleuths, and a few individuals who have came forward over the years. The FBI theory. According to the FBI, the only person they had as a close suspect was a gentleman named Richard Floyd McCoy, who actually attempted the same type of plane escape and ransom request 5 months after the Cooper incident. Unfortunately, though, he did not match any of the physical characteristics given by the stewards who interacted with Cooper the most throughout his time on the plane. There have been other individuals, but no concrete leads, and there has been no other individual who has fallen under the category or without a reasonable doubt. The Citizen Sleuth Theory. A group called the Citizen Sleuths has a theory Cooper was possibly a French Canadian who came to this country to work as an engineer or a manager for Boeing. This was decided on and thought of as a idea that the analysis done on his tie revealed that he had some ferrous metals of titanium and aluminum materials that were used in the aircraft industry in the 1971 to 1975 range. And then specifically that he requested negotiable American currency. Not a typical statement by a person living within the United States for a long period of time. And also, a third point, a Belgian comic book which was only printed in French. The main character was a man named Dan Cooper, who was a skydiver. And then finally, the third theory, L.D. Cooper theory. According to the Seattle Times, a woman named Marla Cooper from Sisters, Oregon, claimed that her uncle L.D. Cooper, she believed to be actually D.B. Cooper. On the eve of Thanksgiving 1971, her father and her uncle L.D. Cooper left to go turkey hunting, which was slightly unusual for them. They did not show back up to the next day, and L.D. was covered in blood and claiming he was in a car accident. Later on in the year, she claimed that she heard L.D. saying that they did it. They hijacked a plane and their money troubles were over. She's only seen L.D. roughly 2 times after that and practically vanished from here on out. He died in 1999. Here are some of the facts. Though they are sparse, there are a few. Additionally, besides the physical evidence that was found in the plane, a boy named Brian Ingram in the 1980s found roughly $5,800 with the numbers matching some of the ransom money given to D.B. Cooper in 1971. The man named Dan Cooper or D.B. Cooper is known in the mainstream, remains at large 45 years later. With lack of very little evidence at all, it is hard to even begin to decide if he survived the jump, if he's still here today, or if he perished on that Thanksgiving Eve night. Ask yourself this. This is what I want you to ask. What do you think actually happened to DB? We have all the science and technology in the world and 45 years later, we still have no answers. There's been so many cases solved in this world, and this is still a mystery to this day. Thank you for listening, and hopefully someday we can figure out who and where DB is.